So I've been getting into tokusatsu lately, Japanese special effects shows. If you've ever watched Power Rangers, you might know that that show is actually Frankensteined together between English footage and Japanese footage of the tokusatsu Super Sentai, specifically Zyuranger, a dinosaur-themed season from 1992. But here's what you might not know. Before Saban Entertainment settled on using Zyuranger, there was actually a different Super Sentai series they were thinking of using footage from instead. One that could have completely changed Power Rangers and the course of 90s American pop culture as we know it. Let me introduce you to Chōjin Sentai Jetman.
Chōjin Sentai Jetman!
Originally airing in Japan in 1991, Jetman marked a huge turning point for the Super Sentai franchise. You see, after years of constant, campy, toy commercial vibes, the Japanese show had become stale and was actually on the verge of cancellation. So with their budgets cut and nothing to lose, the showrunners decided to swing for the fences and try something different. A sharp-edged, grittier version of the show that pulled most of its inspiration from melodramatic anime, sci-fi epics, and, Top Gun? I guess. Jetman's story is part superhero adventure, part soap opera. The premise? In the year 1990X, Earth's global defense force has developed technology called Birdonic Waves as a part of Project J, a secret plan to create 5 super soldiers. Why the bird theme? Who knows? During the first experiment, the Defense Force's space station is attacked by the Vyram, a group of ne'er-do-wells from an alternate dimension. The assault is devastating, and we follow Ryu Tendo, a member of the elite Sky Force and test subject of Project J, as he tries to escape the chaos. Ryu's fiancé and fellow officer Rei is seemingly killed in the attack, and after Ryu's transformation, the remaining Birdonic Waves are mistakenly fired down to Earth, hitting 4 random civilians. Ryu and his commander then set out to find these accidental super soldiers and recruit them as Jetman, Earth's last defense against these outer dimensional invaders. Let's meet the team. 5 colors: red, white, yellow, blue, and black. Red Hawk is our boy Ryu, the only member trained for the mission. He is an elite pilot and straight-laced officer, a natural-born leader, but haunted by the death of his wife-to-be. White Swan is Kaori, a bored, spoiled, and wildly wealthy socialite. Yellow Owl is Raita, a clumsy but warm-hearted, gentle giant farmer. Blue Swallow is Akko, a feisty high schooler looking to strike it rich before she's even got a diploma. And Black Condor is Guy, your classic, brooding, leather jacket-wearing, motorcycle-riding renegade. They're all very early 90s. If that's your flavor of nostalgia, you will fall in love with each of them right away. Problem is, aside from Ryu, none of our heroes are actually really that interested in being heroes at first. None of them asked for their newfound superpowers, and as such, resist the call to adventure. Ryu spends the start of the series trying to play the part of Nick Fury to bring them all together. Personalities quickly clash, and the result is a team that constantly squabbles, walks out on each other at the worst times, and spends half of every episode learning to try and get along. More on that in a bit. Let's meet the baddies. We've got 4 different villains. First, Count Radige, a sort of medieval vampire knight who is allergic to love and determined to rule both dimensions with a metal fist. He's a ruthless, sadistic, sort of Sephiroth prototype, also can transform into a huge monster on occasion. Maria, a weird whip-wielding villainess with heavy headwear who just so happens to look quite a bit like Ryu's late fiancé. She's the architect of the bio-dimensional bug, which can turn everyday objects into killer monsters. There's Gray, a robot assassin who spends most of his time hanging out in the background, looking cool and dropping the occasional hard one-liner. And finally, Tran, a whiny, sadistic kid in VR glasses and a Nintendo Power Glove with the inexplicable ability to manipulate space-time whenever the plot calls for it. The whole show becomes a tug of war between Jetman trying to learn how to function as a team and the Vyram trying to one-up each other in terms of rank villainy. You see, just like the heroes, the villains don't get along either, and that's where the sort of soap opera-esque drama comes from. Each episode spends as much time on the interpersonal conflict between these different characters as it does the actual monster fights. There's romantic tension, coming-of-age angst, military drama, rivalries, drastic betrayals, surprise reveals, all wrapped inside of the typical tokusatsu formula. It's like somebody took the skeleton of a kid's daytime action show and filled it out with like actual meaty storylines. As I alluded to earlier, Jetman was the product of an interesting time in Japanese television. In 1991, Super Sentai's future was in doubt, having just come off a previous season that tanked so badly in the ratings and in toy sales that the studio had all but decided to put the whole show on ice. Chōjin Sentai Jetman was developed under this looming threat. Behind the scenes, the show's budget had been drastically slashed, and the remaining members of the creative team approached it as a sort of last hurrah, an opportunity to try something bold, seeing as theoretically they really didn't have much more to lose. So free from the pressure of needing to please audiences and executives, because hey, we're probably going to get canceled anyway, the team took creative risks that they might not have dared to do in a more stable year. They pushed the emotional stakes higher. They filled the show with adult characters, messy relationships, morally gray decisions, and genuine consequences. Instead of another formulaic season, they made a legit soap opera in spandex, where characters didn't just fight monsters all day, they fell in love, broke each other's hearts, questioned their place in the world, and sometimes didn't make it out alive. It was made like it might be the last Sentai ever. And ironically, that gamble paid off. Jetman's popularity soared, convincing the studio to give the show another shot and order another series for 1992, which became Zyuranger, which became Power Rangers, and the rest is history. Most Americans have never heard of Jetman, but without it, the history of American television would have been drastically different. And I don't mean that in the way that you think. Think about it like this. In 1993, Saban Entertainment had two different options to choose from when it came to sourcing footage for their new Power Rangers show: 1991's Jetman or 1992's Zyuranger. They of course ended up going with 92's dinosaur theme over 91's bird theme on a hunch that American kids would find dinosaurs more appealing. This was the correct decision. But imagine if they had chosen Jetman instead. It's interesting to think about, right? At its core, Jetman is a show about 5 strangers who are forced into a war they didn't ask to fight and the chaos that results. It is a character-driven series first and a superhero action show second. Yes, there's the standard action show staples, the stunts, the pyrotechnics, the weekly monster fights, the big robot battles, but it's the ever-evolving relationships between the heroes and the villains that become the real story. In the first half of the series, the team is a dysfunctional mess. Ryu is trying to keep the team together while simultaneously mourning the loss of his fiancée. Kaori is awkwardly transitioning from life as a pampered debutante to a frontline soldier. Raita tries to be Mr. Cool, but constantly finds himself being the butt of the joke. Akko is in it just for the paycheck and barely hides her disinterest. And Guy, well, Guy wants nothing to do with any of it. He actively hates being part of a team. He refuses to follow orders and spends most of his time brooding in bars or getting into fights that he can't win alone. Over the course of 51 episodes, the show lets these tensions breathe. People walk out of missions, fights break out amongst the crew, feelings get hurt, hearts are broken, and all of that. But over time, grudging respect turns into real trust, and by the midpoint of the show, you can feel the group finally starting to gel, even if the wounds from previous battles never fully heal. And this eventually gives way to various love triangles. Boy, oh boy, does this show have them. Kaori falls for Ryu, who is still in love with his possibly dead fiancée Rei. Guy, in turn, falls for Kaori. Raita has a crush on her at some point. Kaori is basically the one breaking up the band most of the time, but there's also one between Ryu, Maria, and Gray. It gets kind of intense. All these romance threads play out over the course of the series, not as one-off subplots, but as the core engines of the story, and it gets messy. Characters lash out about who's flirting with who, they make bad decisions, they hurt each other. I will admit that at first I found all of this a total turnoff, but over time, it started growing on me, and I eventually became, way too invested in how it was going to play out. From what I understand, all of this drama began winning over adult viewers too. Japanese moms watching the show with their children started really getting invested in these characters and were particularly fond of Guy, who I understand became something of a cult heartthrob. Kids in Japan may have come to the show for the robot fights, but moms stuck around to see whether White Swan and Black Condor would ever find a way to make it work. As the show progresses through all of this, we get just as much screen time with the bad guys, because whoever can defeat Jetman first gets command of the Vyram. Radage wants power and resents anybody who stands in his way. Maria is quietly wrestling with her origins. Gray tries to reconcile his ruthless programming with these small, flickering moments of humanity. Tran transforms from a sadistic child into a terrifying adult at one point and stages a full-blown coup. There are shifting alliances, betrayals, violence, rare moments of vulnerability. Of course, make no mistake, Jetman is still very much a tokusatsu at its core. For all of its high-stakes drama and mature character arcs, it is also unapologetically a trope fest. It's one of those shows where once you figure out the formula, you'll pretty much know how the average episode is going to go within the first 60 seconds. A monster of the week shows up with a weird gimmick, the team has some interpersonal squabble, drama, 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 they get their butts kicked, drama, drama, rematch, one character has an emotional epiphany mid-fight, cue transformation sequence, roll call pose, action action, finisher move, and giant robot battle as the cherry on top. It's pretty classic and straightforward stuff. The show rarely turns down a good cliche, but it's self-aware enough to treat them with sincerity. Nothing is tongue-in-cheek here, and I think that that's maybe the real magic trick. It is not ashamed of just being a show with an absurd premise that is played totally straight. It's not trying to change what tokusatsu is, it's just showing you how good the genre can be when everybody involved fully commits to the bit. Having said all of that, let's talk about the stuff that I didn't like. First off, the budget limitations of this show at times can be truly painful to watch, even by early 90s Japanese kids TV standards. They reuse a ton of footage throughout the show, far more than what you would expect to find even in a genre that is often built around recycled shots. Early tokusatsu get criticized a lot for this, but you gotta keep in mind that TV programming was way different in the pre-streaming era. Chōjin Sentai Jetman aired once a week, every Friday at 5:30 p.m. And if you missed an episode, you missed it. And unless you were a diehard lucky enough to either catch a rerun or own a VCR, you probably only saw each episode once. These shows were never meant to be binged back to back or examined frame by frame, where reused footage or locations or choreography would become obvious. Watching the show today definitely exposes a lot of these technical shortcomings. The fight scenes are the perfect example. Many episodes have basically identical stunt setups that are recycled over and over again. Particularly, the infamous flying kick being the most notable. You will see it dozens of times throughout the show. Why? Because production-wise, it was easy to set up, it is safe to perform, and it costs you next to nothing. Shout out to the stunt crew's mini trampoline. That thing got a workout. By far the biggest thing that you will notice in this respect is what we will call the landfill. It's this big stretch of gravel and dirt that is not at all interesting to look at, and yet they go back to this location all the time because the production crew shot a ton of minion fight sequences there early on in production with wire work and pyrotechnics that they then choose to just plop into each episode to kill airtime. Once you notice it, you will then start to notice how many of the show's episodes are like reverse engineered to try and get the characters to end up at that landfill. They'll be in the middle of the city chasing a monster, and then like 3 seconds later, somehow inexplicably end up back at the exact same stretch of empty dirt just in time to cue the stock footage fight. It's perfectly serviceable, I get it, but it doesn't exactly push boundaries either. Before watching Jetman, I watched Time Ranger, which they made years after this. That season had a ton of varied setups, with each monster using its own unique fighting style. None of that's going on here. Jetman totally lacks such variety, but I mean, of course it does. The team and the budget was totally stripped down and operating on a terrifyingly tight production schedule. TV shows today are filmed usually like 6 months to a year before they ever go to air. This gives plenty of time for things like CGI and post-production editing. Jetman was rolling out its episodes week to week. Whatever they shot on set Monday was usually what ended up going out over the air the next Friday. You're not doing a lot of second takes, and you're definitely not devoting any time for elaborate fights. Visually, I will say that I adore the Jetman costumes, both the heroes and the villains. These are some of my favorites ever made in the Super Sentai Power Rangers series, but I will say, from a storytelling perspective, there's a bit of thematic whiplash. Take Time Ranger, for example. You've got a team of futuristic police officers, and so they get matched against an alien crime boss and his sadistic, futuristic robot companions. The theme connects. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. You've got these magic dinosaurs, so they're fighting against an ancient witch and her mythological monsters. That connects. Jetman's villains are interdimensional, aristocratic warlords able to bend space-time, so our heroes are birds, I guess. The heroes look really cool, the villains look really cool, but they are like totally mismatched. Like, it's like somebody took them from completely different seasons. That bothered me throughout the whole thing. On that note, the show spends a lot of time with the Vyram, giving us a deep look at what's happening over on the bad guys' side of things, which was, as I understand, a bit of a rarity. I love the Vyram characters. Love them. But for such a compelling villain lineup, we learn almost nothing about how their powers work. Like, what even is the reverse dimension? What are the rules to this weird David Lynch-style world that they hail from? How did they get here? What is their end game? The show invites plenty of questions, but rarely answers any of them in a way that's satisfying. It's just bad guys bad, because if bad guys weren't bad, where would TV show? As for the Jetman team, Guy, Black Condor, is far and away the most developed character in the group. He has a full story arc. He grows, he regresses, loves, loses. His story throughout the show is a whole journey. It is great. Everybody else? Nah. Ryu and Kaori, while central to the narrative, are quickly reduced to stock hero guy and love interest, respectively. They're not bad, they're just static. Again, walking tropes, and while they initially show promise, Yellow and Blue get increasingly minimized as the show progresses until they mostly just serve as severely underwritten comic relief, which is a shame because both of these actors are great and you wish they were kind of given more material to work with throughout the show, and that unevenness extends to the episodes themselves, which vary widely in quality. Some weeks the show is polished and even borderline cinematic. Other times, the episodes feel like they were slapped together in an afternoon with a couple of monster scenes, a team chat, and then seemingly nothing but the aforementioned recycled footage before a quick 30-second ending. When the show's bad, oh, it can be so bad. I'm looking at you, Tomato King episode. This kind of thing is super prevalent toward the tail end of the first half of the season, except episode 21, Walking Garbage. That one is like, it's like the saddest thing. Oh, it hurt my heart so much. I need to make a video just on that episode. Other standout episodes include number 39, Spin Roulette of Life, a guy-centered story that actually acts as an homage to James Bond being set at none other than Casino Royale. When the villains kidnap the other 4 Rangers, Guy has no choice but to face off in a high-stakes gambling session that just oozes cool the whole time. Episode 42, Sleep on My Chest, is so dark. I can't even begin to explain it. It's good. I would absolutely recommend, though, that you do watch this entire show, primarily because of its ending, which I am not going to spoil, except to say, wow. However, if you are going to watch Jetman, watch it in a certain way. So for me, I did one episode every couple of days just before I went to bed. Trust me, if you watch the show half asleep, it makes for great comfort TV. Don't binge it all at once. It is not meant to be watched that way. You need to let it exist in your life as a slow burn. The ending will have more impact. All of that to say this, Jetman is a fantastic show. And it would have been a terrible decision to bring it to America. There is no way that this show would have made it past censorship boards in the States, and there is no way that the bird theme would have been nearly as popular. Dinosaurs were the thing in the early 90s. It absolutely was one of the reasons why Power Rangers became so stinkin' popular in the States. If Saban had elected to use the bird-themed Jetman footage instead, I have zero confidence that Power Rangers as a franchise would even exist anymore. But still, it's fun to think about. And I am more than happy to hear your opinion in the comments. I'm sure many of you are already typing them. If you're interested in watching this show, it is available on streaming in many countries. And hey, while I have you here, if you've been on the internet for any period of time, you know that there are a ton of scummy and scammy websites that try to vacuum up your personal info. Your name, your phone number, your old address from 3 apartments ago, and then they sell it to shady marketing lists. It's extremely annoying. But here's the part they don't tell you. Most of those data brokers are actually legally required to remove your information if you ask them to. But that means tracking each and every broker down one by one, and that takes forever. That's why I have begun using Incogni. Think of it like your digital bodyguard. You sign up, you tell them what data you would like protected, and then they start sending those removal requests out to every database they can find you on. But they don't just send the request and call it good. Afterward, they track who actually deletes the info and keeps hammering the ones that don't until they do. You could do this yourself, sure, but it will will be a never-ending battle that most folks just don't have time for. Why not let Incogni do it for you? Literally within 20 minutes of my first time using it, they had already gotten me removed from over 100 databases. With a 30-day money-back guarantee and the ability to cancel at any time, you might as well give it a shot. Hit up incogni.com/AustinMcConnell. Then use the promo code AustinMcConnell at checkout and you can get 60% off an annual plan. Check out the links below so they know I sent you.